Hello there, folks. I'm Dan Brown from a sort of interesting life.com. You're joining me on board good old Narrowboat Tilly, and today we're going to have a quick rundown of some answers to frequently asked questions about Tilly and myself. Nothing too in-depth and wildly detailed. This is going to be a very quick update video just for the unbelievable amount of new subscribers who have joined the channel recently. Again, I mean, we're now over 11,000 subscribers, so thank you so much. That's just unbelievable and unthinkable, really. So, just to fill in anybody who's missed out on the previous hundreds and hundreds of videos, I'll not make you sit down and watch them all, don't worry, I'd never put you through that. I just thought I would cover a few of the frequently asked questions that I get, just to bring everybody up to speed. I will, hopefully, maybe even by the time this video is live, have also added a little part to the website of frequently asked questions over on a sort of interestinglife.com, or just sort of interesting.com. There's goodness knows how many websites I've had over the past that point there in the end, but that's all irrelevant. Don't know if you heard that little bang then. It's quite a windy day, so if every now and then I suddenly go way up, then you know what's going on. We're not quite on the high seas, but my goodness me, the weather we've had recently. So that's our first distraction dealt with, so let's actually get into the questions. Me and Tilly are both 28 years old, with a classic vintage of 1987. Tilly is only 30 foot long, which makes her short even by narrowboat standards, and I would say equally, I'm not sure how tall I am, but I'm short by grown-up standards too. Moving swiftly on from that, I would say also, I'm not sure which one of us is in the better condition at age 28, but Tilly's not doing too bad. Also, something that I do get is, yes, I do have a shower and a toilet on board Tilly, just through, and I'll post a link in the description actually to a proper tour of Tilly overall, so you can get a proper look rather than me try and explain it all. But basically, as you step down from the stern through the door, there's a cut out sort of part of the inside space, which is basically just a big wet room with a shower and then a toilet and the boiler and the world's smallest sink in there too. So that's a quick rundown of the extreme basics. I bought Tilly over 3 years ago in mid-2012. She cost me £11,000 at the time. I bought it outright, I didn't borrow any money, wasn't given a fortune by my parents as some people seem to want to believe. I had £20 off my dad to call in and have a meal at a pub on the way back on my original trip off Tilly, and I had 20 quid with the same instructions off me mum pretty much. So I had 40 quid of outside investment when I first bought Tilly, but the whole purpose was to buy her outright without any debt and have this extremely small, simple, low-cost base to be able to just get out and enjoy the last of my 20s at the very least on. And I've, as you may see from these previous videos, I do quite like this whole wandering around in the countryside. I'd say, as an average from the past experience over the past few years, I'd say she costs maybe about £1,300 a year to run, including the boat licence and heating and things like that. But again, that is saying that extremely low yearly running cost on a tiny 30-foot boat with no like TV or anything like that on, just extremely simple. Got me water, got me gas for the boiler and the cooker and stuff, and everything is as low cost as I can get it. So that's the general overall basis of why I wanted a boat. And originally I was looking to get a bigger boat and a more expensive boat, but I think it was ultimately just impatience and years of me and me friends setting up mock layouts for boats and looking in shops at all the things we could get and just how basic and simple we could make a boat and stuff like that. It just got the better of me, and in my impatience it was like, oh, I've got to get a boat, and I ended up with tiny Tilly here. And I've got to say, to be honest, I wouldn't change it for the world after these fantastic years that I've had on board already. As I say, who knows what the future holds. My plans for the future are basically to continue doing what I'm doing for another year, then in 2017, when I am 30, make a proper decision on my future, on Tilly's future, what I want in life, and basically figure out when I'm there. I've heard it said that your 20s are for learning and your 30s are for earning, and I absolutely love that saying, although maybe when I'm 35 and stuck in a 50-hour-a-week job, I might not love it so much if the world pans out that way. To go back to the financial side of things, Basically, here's my miniature life story. When I was in school, never had a clue what I wanted to do with my future. When I went to college, and for overseas viewers, that's college as in sort of age 16 to 18 rather than age 18 to 20, well, mid-20s. That's the sort of level of education. Still didn't have a clue what I wanted to do while I was at college. And basically, the only thing I ever really wanted to do was write books, which unfortunately wasn't really a likely thing to ever happen at that point, because obviously there wasn't things like the Kindle and that I've then gone on to self-publish on. And thank you to anybody who does look at my books, because it really does help out. So thank you so much. So basically then sold Star Wars figures on eBay for a living for a while. And yes, that's honestly a real thing that actually happened, believe it or not. It shows what a different world it was back then. And then I got a real job in a supermarket and just went in for years and years doing like 39 to 43 hour weeks, and basically just went like that and was doing proper full-time work. And I'd basically either be at work or at home at my mum's house playing computer games and not really doing anything apart from those two things. I was literally, well, as I say, I literally sold Star Wars figures on eBay for a certain period. I was the ultimate nerd back then. Then as my 20s continued to creep along, I got into the outdoors, and in 2009, which really was an absolute pivotal year for what shaped my future, really got into the outdoors in a massive way and spent about, I don't know if it was like 5 or 6 weeks in Scotland and camping and travelling all over, going up mountains left, right and centre, and then came back and started doing that just in the local area around my hometown of Oswestry, and all of these different things that basically I'd never thought, oh yeah, look outside, there's a lot of stuff to do and see out there. And so basically walking and cycling and that sort of stuff really took over my life. And even when I was still working full time, I'd be putting in a good amount of miles on boot and bike. But then, as I sort of realised, hang on, I've got to do something else here, I can't just indefinitely mill around at my mum's house. So I started looking for different options, and it's like, oh, it's too expensive to move in on my own somewhere, and all of these phases that I went through, until I sort of just by pure accident, when I was off work for 2 months with my second hernia, which was no fun, as for somebody who was extremely active, being told to not do anything for 2 months basically, it was very annoying. And just while I was out being paddled down on a canoe trip that my friends had taken me on, feeling sorry for me, obviously I didn't have a paddle. I was like, I always think of it as Cleopatra being paddled down the Nile on a barge, on a golden barge. Obviously we were just 3 people in a canoe. But as we went past one boat, and this is the famous moment where there was a for sale sign in one of the windows on this boat, and my friend just said, yeah, you could live on a boat. And so I was like, hang on, I could live on a boat. And because I had all this time off work still, and I didn't have anything other to do than sit around in a house looking on the internet, I started looking at boats and then got more into it and was like, you know what, this might actually be something I really enjoy. And at this point I was really into astronomy as well. And like I say, I mean, even going back to my teenage years, I've got tens of thousands of words written because I just loved writing. And I mean, it was maybe a little bit odd looking back that I spent so much time writing just literally thousands upon thousands of words in stories that will never see the light of day, or perhaps they will one day, who knows. But basically my interests at the time, and still to this day, were walking, biking, astronomy, reading and writing. And obviously as I was looking at boats and starting to figure out and thinking, yeah, I could live really cheaply and really simply and do all the things that I love in unknown quantities than before. And basically that's what won me over. You've got perfect dark sky, rural places to moor up for astronomy. You've got a different place to go walking and cycling, and different routes and commutes to work and all that sort of stuff as and when you want to move the boat. You've got perfect peaceful places for writing and all this scenery and stuff. And it was just the full package that at that point, and even to this day, seemed to really perfectly fit in with what I was doing with my life back then. And the fact that it was this, as far as I could tell, going to be a much cheaper option than trying to live in a flat on my own and that sort of stuff. And as I say, as an average, the boat running costs specifically have cost me maybe around $1,300 a year, I would say. That for part-time work is well within budget. So I've dropped me hours right down at work to just 2 days a week from being there maybe 5 or 6 days a week. And from there on, never really looked back, and just been extremely lucky that I've really enjoyed what I've done with Tilly and that. And basically, if I could keep doing this indefinitely, then I would. But I've got no illusions that one day it might all have to come to an end, and I'm saving money and just trying to do sensible things and be sensible and not be too stubborn that I'm going to be like, right, I'm only ever going to live on a boat and I'm going to make my life really hard to do it. It's all about just, well, really enjoying life and not making it hard for yourself. So that's my general life story of how I ended up with Tilly, and I hope from that you can sort of get more of the background of why I love it so much. And because I've always been somebody who's been maybe a little bit of a loner, certainly never fit in with the general crowd, it's like I get on well with just my own company. So sometimes in these more secluded rural places, it's like I can just sit down, do some writing, get these videos done. And, well, I'd say as it stands now, for a very long time, as all this YouTube stuff has taken off, because it's important to remember that, well, for people who've never seen me ever before, it's important to know that there's this YouTube stuff is stuff that I've always done also as a hobby for fun. And for years and years and years, nobody ever cared or watched these videos. So the fact that I carried on posting these videos and then suddenly there's like 11,000 subscribers and getting on for 3.5 million views, it's totally out of the blue almost, compared to the amount of years before about and before all this crazy YouTube stuff took off, of nobody interested, to suddenly in these last couple of years being like, what's going on? There's actually people watching these videos. So again, thank you so much, and it's just amazing. It keeps me extremely busy, and that was what I was going to say originally, that between writing and doing these videos, that's like probably the thing that I spend the most time doing, more time than any other individual thing, I would say. And because I love it and I still enjoy it, particularly the writing, I'm more than happy to just keep doing it. Going back to the frequently asked questions section of this video, something that people often ask me is, how do I get about to and from the boat and to towns and supplies and things like that? And I'll say that these days, more so than ever, certainly over 2015, I bike almost everywhere. I do a lot of walking for fun, but a lot of commuting, a lot of getting supplies is all done by bike these days. And I've had fewer bus trips this year than any other year of my sort of adult life, I would say. And that's something that it certainly makes life more difficult a lot of the time, but it also is extremely rewarding a lot of the time. And for most places, as the luck of the draw has it, growing up and living in Oswestry and having me friends and family in the town and in the small villages around that the canal like sort of passes through, even though the canal doesn't go to Oswestry itself, it does for a huge like portion skirt around the outskirts of town, maybe about 3 to 5, maybe 6 miles away in this huge semicircle. So a lot of the places that Tilly isn't like a wild distance away from getting in for work and that sort of thing. There's obviously times where it's like gets extreme weather conditions and that, where I have the ace in the hole of obviously having family in town that I can go and stop at my mum's house or wherever the night before I need to be in work and then travel back out after work and stuff like that. But I would say, against what some people wish to believe, the place that I spend most of my time if I'm not on Tilly isn't actually in town or at my mum's house or anything like that. It's at two of my all-time best friends out at Western Ryn, which is just up from Chirk, the Chirk Aqueduct, Chirk Tunnel, that sort of area. And basically, even though it's more difficult to go to their house than it is to go to me mum's and sleep before work, I mean, a perfect example of this is Tilly was down at Whitchurch recently, which is about 26 plus miles from Oswestry itself. So there's obviously nowhere I could cycle into work to do 8 hours in a supermarket and then bike another 20 odd miles back out to Tilly and then do it again the next day, for example. So what I did was bike from, it was a 22-mile bike ride from Tilly out at Whitchurch all the way up to Western Ryn and then stop the night at their house, rather than, well, basically it's just fun, it's the experience. So like spending time with me friends and all that sort of general, having friends, I suppose it's called. So basically I biked all the way to their house, but still from their house it's a 5-mile bike ride into town and where I work, and then obviously another 5 mile back out. So sometimes I literally, over these working days, will put in goodness knows how many miles, and it's split up over, like, sort of, if I'm working 2 days together, I will still have to bike 10 miles a day in and out from my friend's house. But the day before and after work, or maybe the day before I'm working, it might be like a 22 mile bike ride in that example. And then depending on what hours I work at work, sometimes I'll bike straight out to the boat. And as I've said, I mean, in the past, I've literally been on my bike at 2 a.m, leaving Oswestry if I've been trying to get stuff done with the internet and uploading videos and that, and just generally catch up on odd jobs and stuff I might need to do with a proper solid landline internet connection. Then I will literally bike out, and as I say, in the past, I've literally been getting back to Tilly in the real small hours of the morning, between 2 and 4 a.m. like. So it definitely doesn't make it the easiest life ever. I'm extremely lucky to have people that I know dotted about the place. And even though it doesn't really make any sense to go to my friend's house rather than go and stop at my mum's house, it's more enjoyable, and it's what I love doing. And as I've said many times, long before I ever had a boat, for years I've spent nights out at my friend's house, and just, it's weird. It's one of those weird things, really, the more that I look at it, that there's no explanation, that it's how it's always been, and it's how it just carried on being while I've moved and transitioned into the life that I've tried to build with Tilly. And ultimately, it's, well, like I say, it's all about being active. And I mean, even before I ever had the idea of, like, the boat and that, I would literally finish work and go to my mum's house where I lived at the time, and still end up hopping on my bike and sometimes setting out again in the ridiculous late hours of the night, early morning, and just doing, like, maybe a 15 mile bike ride all the local villages. And these are crazy things to think back on, that I was biking further sometimes then, to go, well, just for fun, as part of my day after I'd finished work, than I do in my entire days cycling from Tilly into town, doing work, and then cycling back out at night. And again, I mean, there's so many little questions and little things that I can get around to, or won't get around to sooner or later, hopefully, that I could talk endlessly, and I've already talked far longer than I wanted this video to be. But hopefully it's shed a little bit of light for people who've tuned into these videos recently, people who are generally just interested in a little bit more of the background as to the run-up to me getting Tilly and how it all occurred. Then I suppose I'll wrap things up because I've talked so long at you. So thank you so much for watching if you've managed to make it this far. If you want to see the guided tour of Tilly, I'll post a link in the description. I'll also post a couple of links to some documentary episodes I've done about boat life and Tilly, so you can see how I live and that in a little bit more detail than I've shown in the short film and the things like these videos. Equally, please do check out the links in the description for the Facebook page and that sort of stuff, for loads of boaty and canal scenery. Feel free, if you want to help me out, to spread the word, and please do consider checking out my short boat life books for the Kindle. Again, links to all those in the description. But until the next time, please do have an absolutely fantastic day, keep it boat worthy, and of course, farewell.